Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Before we get this video started, I do want to mention that these gas blocks I am selling. So keep that in mind if you don't want to purchase them or whatever you have to say about them. Keep that in mind that I am actually selling them, and so I may not be 100% unbiased. That being said, we have a couple different guns, a bunch of different ammo types, and let's go ahead and get to the testing. Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Today we're going to be talking about Cotton Arms adjustable gas block. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I am actually selling these and there is a link to them in the description, but I'll explain more about that at the end of the video. For right now, let's go ahead and talk about what they actually are. So essentially they are a very standard looking, very standard size gas block. They're 7.50, so they'll fit most standard AR-15 barrels, but if you have a heavier profile barrel like an 8.35 or a 9.37, it's not going to work for that. 7.50 is, as far as I can tell, is the only size that they have their gas blocks in, and they really only sell them from one website. So I picked these guys up on sale for like $22 a piece delivered, so not bad at all. Very, very cheap, even for regular gas blocks. Most really expensive, even non-adjustable gas blocks, are somewhere from like $50 to $70 depending on features and materials. Now, going over some of the basic information about the gas block is that it is machined out of 4140 steel, which is the same material as most of your barrels will be. Now, it's also not a slim, it's not a slim gas block, it's not a low profile. Well, it is low profile. It will fit under any rail that you want it to, but it's not one of those super slim, super light guys. It's not machined to have like cool cutouts on it or anything like that. It's just a fairly simple, blocky gas block, no pun intended, and but it's adjustable and it's cheap. You can generally find them for around $25 to $30 depending on where you get them from. But again, this is an adjustable gas block at the price of a regular Mil-Spec gas block. So really they're very similar. The only real difference is on here is this guy here is actually a little bit fatter than your normal Mil-Spec sort of gas blocks are going to be, just your cheap regular ones that are going to come with most guns you buy. This guy here is adjustable, and the adjustments on it are really good. But before we get into that, I put about 2,500 rounds through these different gas blocks. I put 1,000 through this rifle, I put 1,000 through this pistol, and I put another 500 through that AR-10 that's sitting over there. I'll show you that in a minute. And I have not had a single issue with pins walking out or anything like that on these guys, or the adjustments changing on me. Once you set them, you kind of set them and forget them, although that's not entirely true, and we'll talk about that in a minute in the downsides of one of these guys. But that is to say that I've tried it on a variety of different guns, barrel lengths, even calibers, and they work extremely well, and they work as advertised. They do exactly what they say they'll do. If you want to reduce your gas flow, you can absolutely do that. If you want to increase your gas flow a little bit for whatever reason, if your gas block is restrictive, you can do that with these guys as well. Now, let's get into kind of the key defining feature about these guys, and that is their adjustments and how well they adjust. So these guys here, they adjust from the side, which is really nice. They don't adjust from the front of the gas block, which they do on a lot of other models, which I think is kind of unfortunate and a little bit obnoxious, because if you have a longer rail, like say this guy, where it's a 15-inch rail, you're not going to be able to reach that gas block for adjustment. But because these guys adjust from the side, I'm able to adjust these guys without having to move rails, without having to move, for the most part, accessories out of the way. I can reach them with my Allen key directly from the outside of the rail and adjust it as needed. Though you generally shouldn't have to adjust it, but you do have that ability if you so desired. So when I was testing it out in the field, I could just change it as I went and did whatever I wanted to do. Now, something that I have done, and you should probably do as well, is that I have tested and experimented with them a little bit. So I did it once, of course, when I first set them. So I wanted to kind of fine tune exactly where I want it. And on my AR-15s, I thought I had it right because it fixed a lot of the overgassing issues and was very, very smooth, but it was still ejecting at a fairly aggressive pattern. So it was ejecting around 1:30 to 2 o'clock, sometimes 2:30, depending on what sort of ammo I was putting through it. And so I thought that was perfectly fine. It wasn't flinging shells a mile like it was before, so I thought it pretty much fixed the issue. But then recently I took it back out and I was going to say, okay, I was going to go do a little bit more testing for this guy, and so I adjusted it even further down and then even further down, and it was still cycling and it was getting even smoother. And so I'll show you this slow-mo clip right here of how smooth I got it with 5.56. Now this is steel at the bleeding edge of what is reliable for steel-cased ammunition, which is how I have all of my ARs tuned. So my AR-10s, my AR-15s, they're all tuned to be at the bleeding edge of reliability with steel-cased ammo. Because steel-cased ammo is the lowest powered ammunition I'm going to be throwing through these guys, and I do shoot a lot of steel, or about 50-50 steel and brass, so I like to be able to run anything and not have to worry about it. Now, I could of course tune it a little bit further down if I wanted to, if I was shooting only brass case or only 55 grain XM193 or only 62 grain or something like that, and you can adjust to whatever load that you want. But for me, I like to have a very simple setup, and I like to kind of set it and forget it. So once I get down to where it's kind of at the bleeding edge or maybe a little bit higher than what it needs to be for steel cased ammunition, then I just let it run. So it's going to run through anything all the time. So for steel-cased ammunition, it's ejecting kind of almost at 4 o'clock, so ejecting behind you most of the time, kind of flinging them out there. And then when I'm running normal 55 grain 5.56, it's ejecting at 3 o'clock, pretty much perfect. If you shoot a little bit hotter stuff or hand loads, you can get forward ejecting patterns, but for the most part, they're very, very smooth, and they'll run whatever you put through them very smoothly. Now, one thing to note about these guys is that if you continuously adjust it, you are going to wear down the end of it where it actually bites into the screw that adjusts how much gas goes into your system. And so the more you adjust it, the more loose it's going to become. So that's why I haven't done a ton. I don't change it every time I go out. I've only adjusted it a few times, like probably 3 times in total is how many times I've adjusted it, because the more you do it, the more loose it will become at the end where it's supposed to bite into it. Now, on top of that, I also blue Loctite all of these guys down, and I have them painted and marked, so if they move, I know that they've moved. So when I'm shooting these guys, basically I'll show it to you a close-up on one of the gas blocks, but I have it marked as a 1, and then I have a line written in white marker which shows me where the pin is at. So if it rotates left or right, I'll be able to see that it moved, of course, because that line will have shifted left or right against the line that's painted on the actual gas block. And of course, if it rotates a full ring out, then I'll see that it's further out. The number on there just dictates how many rings are exposed from the outside of the gas block. So when I have 1 written on it, it means that I should only be able to see the very last ring, and the lines have matched up and I haven't had to adjust them. So in my experience of about 2,500 rounds on 3 different gas blocks, they haven't shifted on me. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the amount of gas going into my system hasn't changed, which we'll talk about in a minute, but the gas blocks themselves are stable and sturdy enough to stand up to AR-10s, AR-15s, and whatever else you want to throw through it. Now, one last quick point before we move on to the major con of a gas block like this, is that these guys do indeed, when you fully close them off, they are 100% closed off. The bolt doesn't move whatsoever. You know, it moves like a 1/4 of an inch or something like that, but it will not eject whatsoever. So when you have these guys fully closed off, they're fully closed off. So if you need to do that for some reason, for some testing purpose, you can do that with these gas blocks. Now, the last thing to mention about these guys, which is the con. So now we're going to get into the bad thing and why you might not want to purchase one of these guys from me or from anywhere else. So pretty much when you're shooting these guys and you have the screw that's poked in there, poked in that hole that's blocking some of the gas that's going through your gas block, you're going to get carbon buildup on that bolt. What that means is that over time that carbon is going to bake on there, it's going to get stuck on there, and it's going to adjust how much gas is going to your system. So right now they're cycling great, but 2,000 rounds from now, after they're just completely covered and coated, and now you're getting 20-30% less gas in the system than you already were, now it's not cycling, and you don't know why it's not cycling. And it's because you have another point of failure, which these gas blocks do add to your system. It is another point of complexity, another point of failure for your system, and it is something that you are going to have to take note of and maintain. So for me, I don't think it's a huge deal, but every few thousand rounds, every 1,000 rounds, however much you're comfortable with, you are going to have to clean off that bolt and or replace it if it gets too gunked up. Now, if you leave it sitting on there for a super long period of time, it is completely possible that that stainless steel bolt that's in there will actually fuse to the gas block itself and just become carbon locked in there, and you won't be able to adjust it whatsoever. And then you'll have to take the whole gas block off, throw it away, and buy another one or put another one on there. So it is an added point of complexity, an added point of failure, and it does add something that can go wrong to your system, whereas most gas blocks can still go wrong. They can still break or melt or do other things, but they're not going to have that adjustability factor, which is something that can lead to a failure in certain scenarios. So whether or not you want them is totally up to you. Now, another solution completely apart from this is just to buy barrels that are correctly gassed from the factory. Now, when you're buying cheaper guns like Bear Creek Arsenal or like ABC Rifle Company, they're going to be overgassed, because when you're buying them and they're not cycling your cheap crappy ammo that you're putting through them, and you're wondering why and you're angry at the gun, they don't want that. So they're going to add a little bit more gas in there to make sure that they're going to cycle whatever you want to put through them. So they're not the smoothest, they're not the nicest, cleanest guns in the world, but they're going to function for you absolutely fine, which is just fine for me in my opinion. So spending an extra $20, $25, $30 putting in an adjustable gas block to get me a nicer, smoother feeling gun is totally worth it in my opinion. But for a duty use gun, you're probably better off buying a higher end barrel that's correctly gassed from the factory and having a really high quality system behind it to make sure that that entire system is operating as smoothly as possible and as simply as possible, so you don't have a bunch of added points of failure and things that can possibly go wrong. One last mini con before we move on and end the video is that these gas blocks are not 100% sealed. So when you're shooting it, if you have your wrist right next to it like I do right now, you're going to get your hand coated in a little bit of carbon or gas bleed off, whatever you want to call it, because they're not 100% perfectly airtight sealed, because it is just a machine thread that a bolt's going into. So it's not 100% airtight, especially when in this system specifically you have a lot of gas moving through it. It's an AR-10, it's a carbine length gas system, it's a shorter barrel, so you have a lot going on here. So you are going to get some carbon or gas bleed through the actual bolt area itself, because it's just not 100% sealed. So now, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I am actually selling these guys, and the reason that I'm selling them is that I have a eBay selling account where I just sell odds and ends parts that I find for a really good deal. And so with these guys here, I bought 10 of them, and I ended up 10 of them other than the ones that you see on these guns right now. And then eBay changed their selling policies, and I got stuck with a bunch of them because they're considered assault weapon parts or something like that. So basically, I'm stuck with them. I paid about $22 a piece for them delivered, and I'm selling them at the link below for $20 delivered. So I'm selling them at a loss to you. If you so choose or just want to try one out, it's 20 bucks. You can just PayPal me or just message me. There's a link down below, and we can get that going for you. But I'm selling them at a loss to you just because I don't need them. They're just laying around. So if you're interested, go ahead and leave a comment down below, or leave me a message, send me money on PayPal, and write a note on there and I'll get you one. Also, the first person to write a comment about their worst experience with an AR-15 gets one for free. So check it out if you want it. So that's pretty much it for the video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace off.